Hi everyone, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3 Q&A video, so here we go. There were so many questions about the mythology, about what's happening next, about what the show's doing with the big twist, so I tried to include as much of that as possible in the video, but I do have a couple other bigger bonus videos planned for later this week to follow up on that. If you're finding me for the first time, be sure to subscribe to get all the Game of Thrones videos. I know we only have 3 episodes left, but then later this summer we'll be talking about the Game of Thrones prequel series that's supposed to premiere next year, which is called The Long Night. I know last night's episode was called The Long Night, but for right now they're just referring to the prequel series as The Long Night, so it gets a little confusing, but don't worry, we'll talk about that after the finale. There's a new round of that HBO Now giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on the video. Obviously careful for spoilers through episode 3 if you have not seen the episode yet. So here we go, first question, House People asks, is there any chance the Night King could be resurrected or recreated? Well, he could be recreated, but there's really, as far as we know, only one person who knows how to do that, and that's Bran Stark, so it depends on whether or not you think he wants another Night King. They haven't absolutely confirmed it, but I think for the most part, they've killed off the Children of the Forest. I think that was the idea of Season 6, Episode 5, when the Night King invaded the Three-Eyed Raven's tree, and there were the remaining Children of the Forest that were there protecting him. But unless there's some that we don't know about that are hiding out on the Isle of Faces, for all intents and purposes, the Children of the Forest are gone on the TV show. Next question, FO asks, can they still use Bran in their fight against Cersei? He can see everything, he can warn them about Qyburn's device. So you're talking about the Scorpions. There's actually an interesting thing that I saw in the behind-the-scenes featurettes this week. If you've ever watched those featurettes that they release, like the game reveal, they'll do interviews with the actors. If you've noticed, the last couple of them have featured all them wearing very summery-looking outfits down on the King's Landing sets. In the behind-the-scenes for Episode 3, you see Bran wearing a very summery-looking outfit on that King's Landing set. So it implies that they're going to take Bran with them when they go to King's Landing to go get Cersei. It doesn't absolutely confirm that he's going down. They could be tricking us, just putting him in a costume like that on that King's Landing set, because a lot of other interviews are happening in this type of space. But it definitely seems like he's going to go down there because he's still alive, and even people have pointed out that there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. They can still avoid trampling on that if Sansa stays in Winterfell, but I think we'll find out pretty soon during Episode 4 who's going down to King's Landing and who's not going down. Next question, Alec asks, do you think that it's possible that Bran was warging into Arya near the end of the episode? What else could he have been doing while Theon was protecting him? So you're just asking about why he just checked out for most of the fight and we didn't see what he was doing. He just seemed like he was warging into something. The first time he did it, he was using the Ravens to find out what was going on with the Night King during the battle, but then later in the episode, he was still warging. You didn't see any Ravens anywhere else, so my assumption, just based on what the show is telling us in this moment, is that he knew what was going to happen because he was using his green sight to try and see into the future. So in this moment, he was looking at the Night King, like when he looks down at the Night King's chest, then back up at his face, he was looking at the weak spot where he knew that Arya would have to kill him. So unless the producers come out and say something different, I'm just assuming that he was using his abilities to see into the future. Next question, Christina asks, will Bran be normal now that the Night King is dead? The Three-Eyed Raven is linked to the existence of the Night King, right? So if that's the case, will Bran be free to be the Lord of Winterfell and perhaps still a warg? That's an interesting question, but I think for now, unless they tell us something radically different at the beginning of Episode 4, I think that it's the exact same for Bran going forward. He still has all that power. You have to remember, based on his explanation, he's the human repository of all knowledge of the world. So it'll be really interesting to see why they would take him to King's Landing and how they're going to use his abilities in the last couple of episodes. Everyone's been making jokes about the creepy stares that he gives everyone that he wheels by in the Winterfell courtyard, but more than anyone, he has been giving Tyrion really long stares, so I think that it implies that he's going to be down in King's Landing knowing that Tyrion is going to do something really crazy. Just in terms of Winterfell, I think that Sansa will continue to be the Lady of Winterfell in the sort of Wardeness of the North and continue to see the reconstruction of Winterfell because most of it got destroyed during the battle. Next question, Joseph asks, would really love to know how Arya got that close to the Night King in the last scene in order to attack and eventually kill him. Did she use the face of one of the dead? I know she's really sneaky, but it seems almost impossible a living person to get past that many White Walkers unless they're disguised as one. There were a lot of questions about this. How sneaky is she? Why was she able to get past all those White Walker generals and get that close to the Night King? The only real complaints that I had about that final scene were mostly the execution. The fact that Jon Snow really didn't do anything to contribute to that, or Daenerys, and George R. R. Martin has kind of been setting that up in the background as this Azor Ahai prince who was promised prophecy. Like Melisandre, I think that you both have a role to play, but when it was all said and done in the moment, it didn't seem like they had much of a role to play. Miguel Sapochnik said something really interesting in the behind the scenes for the way they filmed this scene, and he said that the producers, Dan and Dave, let the people filming it, he the director, the DP, break every rule that the show has about the way they film things. He was mostly referring to the style of filming, like they filmed it in slow motion. Game of Thrones as a show just does not use a lot of slow motion. They also used a very different kind of musical soundtrack, so Ramin Djawadi used piano during the score, and the only other time he's used a lot of piano in a Game of Thrones song was during the Light of the Seven song, which was the song that played over the scene of Cersei blowing up the crypt during Season 6, Episode 10. So on a production level, it was them just trying to make it seem like as special a moment as possible, and when you look at the behind the scenes, she's literally flying through the air. Look at how high up she is in this rig so that they could pull that shot off. So of course, even if you think that Arya has crazy faceless person skills, she can't jump that high in real life. So yes, it is very unrealistic within the context of what her abilities are. But on the most basic of level, what they're trying to say is that the Night King was so focused in this moment with Bran that the other White Walkers were just sort of hypnotized by what was going on in the moment. And this moment of Arya sneaking past them to kill the Night King was what all of her faceless person training was building up to. And in the books, George R. R. Martin has talked a lot about how important Arya is to the endgame. So I do think that in the books, Arya will still be the one to land the killing blow on the Night King, even though in George R. R. Martin's book version of what this scene winds up being will be way, way different. Like Jon Snow and Daenerys will probably have a much bigger role in the way this all goes down. But what I'll do is because there's a much larger conversation about that and why George R. R. Martin's version will be very similar but a little bit different, will be a video later this week about Azor Ahai, the prince and princess who was promised, in the fulfillment of that prophecy. Because this late in the show, I don't think the show is going to tie up all the loose ends that you're expecting it to. Next question, Josh Drummond asks, what's the deal with Melisandre's ending? So you're asking about her just walking out into the field and taking off her necklace and turning almost into dust. There was a bunch of dust coming off her when she fell down. I think that's just another payoff for what she said about how Beric Dondarrion went out. The Lord of Light brought him back for a reason. That reason is fulfilled. Now that he no longer has a purpose, he can die. She felt like the Lord of Light told her in visions that she had a role to play. She felt like she fulfilled that purpose. The long night is over. The threat is gone. So she can finally die. And remember, she is really, really old. That glamour charm worked really, really well. I love it so much that they did the extra special effects to make her old in that moment too. It was just like an extra nice little touch on her ending. But like she told Davos, there's no need to kill me because I'll be dead before dawn. All of her prophecies are starting to come true now. What about the other prophecies about the prince and princess who was promised? Like I said, Melisandre's prophecies starting to come true, so I still think there's a fulfillment of Azor Ahai that's a little bit different from what people are expecting. Next question, Loki of Asgard asks, what do you think about Ghost? Is he still alive? Yes, we saw Ghost in the episode 4 trailer video. We also saw both of Daenerys' dragons, so Rhaegal and Drogon are also still alive. There were a lot of people that were confused about who was alive, who was dead at the end of the episode. They'll answer most of those questions at the beginning of episode 4 because they have to burn all those bodies. So you'll see that scene of everyone standing out there and them having a sort of memorial to all the people that fell, especially the Dothraki. May they rest in peace. Next question, Tanush asks, how will the show deal with all the drawings they have been showing us? They didn't explain that before killing the Night King. So I assume you're talking about all the Children of the Forest drawings, the symbols that the White Walkers and the Night King had been making this whole time. The way they explained some of the symbols, especially at the beginning of the series, and the spiral symbol that the Night King kept making, is that it was really just a perversion of the Children of the Forest symbol that they used to invoke the magic to create the Night King. It'd be like someone going up to a Christian, turning a cross upside down and saying, I am against everything that you stand for. That's basically what the Night King is saying every time he makes a symbol like this. Next question, James D. asks, no one's discussing the Night King possibly being a Targaryen as he survived Dragonfire. There were a lot of questions. I tried to address this during my episode 3 video. He didn't survive the fire because he's Targaryen, it's just because he's so powerful. There's this idea behind the show that everyone's been drawing this power from the same source, like all these different gods they've been worshipping are just different aspects of the same god, like the whole idea of the many-faced god, many faces but one god. The Children of the Forest used their most powerful magic to create the Night King, so it would stand to reason that he would be impervious to almost all kinds of magic, save for the idea that he could be uncreated with Valyrian steel in the exact place where the Children of the Forest stabbed him with that dragonglass when they created him. Next question, Cathuria asks, the origins of the Night King, who was he, and the reason behind him coming after the three-eyed raven? Well, so yeah, Bran gave that basic explainer. He was trying to kill Bran to extinguish man, and Bran was the repository of knowledge of all man, so he was going to get rid of memories of man first. The Night King was created during the time of the First Men and their war with the Children of the Forest, so the Andals had not come over. There were no Targaryens in Westeros yet. It was just the First Men. So he was a Northman that the Children of the Forest captured and used to turn against his own brethren. There are a lot of rumors that he was a Stark of Winterfell. Nobody has confirmed this. George R. Martin hasn't confirmed it yet, but there's some evidence pointing to the fact that he could have been a Stark of Winterfell. And the way the show explains it, he's always been the same Night King, whereas there's been many three-eyed ravens. So one will become the three-eyed raven, he'll grow old, then eventually another one will come along, he'll pass his knowledge on to them, and then that one will pass his knowledge on to the next three-eyed raven, so on and so forth, until you get to Bran Stark. Within the world of Game of Thrones, there are several different events in world history that sound like they're other versions of Long Nights and Night Kings coming, people coming together, different Azor Ahai figures popping up, predating the first Long Night by a long time. There was a very vast civilization in E.T. that rose and fell long before the first Long Night. So there is a theory that there's been many Night Kings in the past, many Long Nights that have come and gone, many different Azor Ahai figures, but I'll talk about that during my Azor Ahai video later this week. Next question, Ankita asks, what the hell was Bran doing all along? So I think for the most part, he was just serving as bait like he said. He was just trying to bait the Night King into thinking that he was vulnerable, whereas most of the time he was working into the future to try and see that everything would go down the way he wanted it to. I'm sure Isaac Hempstead Wright is also probably going to do a bunch of interviews about this moment at conventions in the next couple of years, so he'll probably talk a little bit more about what was going on inside Bran's head during this moment because we don't really see it. We just see him being warged out. Next question, Meetool asks, if the Night King is gone, what about Dany's vision in King's Landing where the roof is gone and it's snowing and she's close to the throne? Yes, a lot of questions about what the meaning of this vision is if the Night King isn't going to be down there to cause any of this damage. I think the vision is still relevant to what's happening in the last couple of episodes, but I think the metaphors are just a little bit different from what people are expecting. I do think that she's going to be forced to give up what she loves. I talked about it during the Jenny of Oldstones explainer that I did last week. Jenny of Oldstones was a commoner who fell in love with one of the Targaryen heirs to the Iron Throne. He was forced to give up his crown in order to be with her. But in this case, I think the twist is that Daenerys is going to have to give up her quest for the Iron Throne to be with Jon Snow. So I think a lot of the vision is just tied up in the idea that she's going to come close to her goal, but she will not actually reach it. Like she's reaching out, but she's not quite touching it. But I also think the battle damage is something to do with the final battle at King's Landing with Cersei. So remember, there's still a couple episodes to go. We still have the huge episode 5 battle, so they could still blow up giant portions of King's Landing during their fight. Next question, Real Angelo asks, who's the original owner of Arya's dagger? There were so many theories about the dagger after we first saw it, after they brought it back, and then we saw it in Samwell's book that was all about Dragonstone, Valyrians, and the Targaryens using dragonglass. If you would have asked me this question last year, my theory is that it actually at one time had belonged to Rhaegar Targaryen, so just tracing it back from Bran Stark and Arya Stark. So Bran hands it to Arya, Littlefinger gave it to Bran. What happened during season 1 is because it's called the Cat's Paw's dagger, it was because it was the Cat's Paw who tried to kill Bran with it. The Cat's Paw was hired by Joffrey. He gave him the dagger, but the dagger had belonged to Robert because he'd won it in a bet from Littlefinger in King's Landing. But you have to remember that there was a scene that the TV show did not do where Joffrey is sitting there the next morning, listening to people talk about what happened to Bran Stark, and through that conversation, he just comes to the conclusion that it would be better to get rid of him. So if Joffrey stole it from Robert Baratheon and Robert Baratheon won it from Littlefinger, how did Littlefinger orchestrate events to get it into Robert's hand, and where did Littlefinger get it from? Well, the idea is that because Rhaegar loved to put rubies in his armor and in his things, like he had rubies all over his breastplate when he died at the Trident. Rubies flew everywhere when Robert Baratheon smashed him with his warhammer at the Trident. Rhaegar was a prince of Dragonstone and a Targaryen, they would have had more access to Valyrian steel either through their money or just through their family heirlooms than anyone else in Westeros, so it's possible that the dagger was acquired during the sack of King's Landing from Rhaegar's things or at some other point. Littlefinger saw an opportunity through Robert Baratheon, knowing that he would be going to Winterfell, so he engineered a situation where the dagger would wind up in his possession and then tried to push things along and create as much chaos as possible. But a lot of what we know about the dagger before it belonged to Littlefinger and Robert Baratheon is conjecture and just theories based on hints that we get throughout the books. Nobody's absolutely confirmed it. Thank you so much for submitting questions. I know there's a billion more, so I'll try to address that in some specific bonus videos later this week. Like I said, my Azor Ahai video will probably be the next one. If there's any other really big questions that you guys have or bonus videos you want me to do before episode 4 airs, just let me know in the comments below. But congratulations to the giveaway winner from my last video, Super Thumpa.